Hey everyone, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Now, as I said in my blog of Fantasia back in 2018, the 1940s wasn't really my favorite decade when it comes to animated Disney films. No offense. Yes, they did make such classical and legendary movies during the time, like Pinocchio, Dumbo, and Bambi, but they also made two animated documentaries about Latin America, one of which I've also blogged, and several other films that were, packaged with either two or several animated stories. However, just recently, I had the weirdest idea of looking back at one of these packaged Disney films from that era, and I want to give my thoughts about it. And, just to let you know, part of today's subject is mouse-related. So, let's get started. Released on September 27th, 1947, the movie is Fun and Fancy-Free. Now, this movie is comprised of two distinct stories linked by additional footage featuring Jiminy Cricket. The first is a musical love story based on a children's tale by Sinclair Lewis and is narrated by the legendary Dinah Shore. It is the tale of a sad little circus bear named Bongo who is adored when performing but is sadly ignored after the show. Tired of traveling and being mistreated, he escapes into the forest where he discovers that life in the wilderness is not as free and easy as he thought. But despite the obstacles awaiting him, Bongo manages to find the one thing that he has longed for most: true love. The second tale is told between ventriloquist Edgar Bergen and his two dummies, Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer Snerd, on Luana Patton's birthday. Together, the three tell a story based on Jack and the Beanstalk, featuring Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy, who climb a magical beanstalk and try to rescue a stolen singing harp in order to restore wealth and happiness to their impoverished kingdom. And what are my thoughts on the movie anyway? Well, I gotta say, this is a really fun Disney classic. But to further explain why I love this movie, let's move on to Mustang notes. This is the fourth of the package films that Disney has produced in the 1940s in order to save money during World War II and to help finance Cinderella and several other Disney films during the following years. During the 1940s, Disney had been planning to use Bongo and Mickey and the Beanstalk for separate feature films, but the involvement of the United States in World War II disrupted his plans, and the stories were shelved until after the war. In the late 1930s, Mickey's popularity fell behind Donald Duck, Goofy, Pluto, Max Fleischer's Popeye, and Warner Brothers' Porky Pig. To boost his popularity, Disney and his artists created cartoons such as The Brave Little Tailor and The Sorcerer's Apprentice, the latter of which was later included in Fantasia back in 1940. In early 1940, during production of Fantasia, animators Bill Cottrell and T. He pitched the idea of a feature film based on Jack and the Beanstalk, starring Mickey Mouse as Jack, and with Donald Duck and Goofy as supporting characters. When they pitched it to Walt, he burst out laughing with tears rolling down his cheek with joy. Disney enjoyed the pitch so much that he invited other employees to listen in on it. However, as much as he enjoyed the pitch of the film itself would never go into production because, as Disney claimed, they murdered his characters. However, Cottrell and he were able to talk Disney into giving it the green light and story development as The Legend of Happy Valley, which began production on May 2nd, 1940. Meanwhile, production was starting on Bongo, a film based on the short story written by Sinclair Lewis for Cosmopolitan magazine in 1930. Originally, the designs for the characters were more realistic, but when paired for Fun and Fancy Free, the designs were simplified and drawn more cartoony. The script was nearly completed by December 8, 1941, the day after the Pearl Harbor attack. On that same day, the United States military took full control of the Disney studio and commissioned Walt Disney Productions to produce instructional and war propaganda films in which pre-production work on Bongo and early versions of Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan were shelved. During and after the war, Disney stopped producing single narrative feature films due to costs and decided to make package films consisting of animated shorts to make into feature films. He did this during the war on Saludos Amigos and Three Caballeros, and continued after the war until he had enough money to take a single narrative feature again. Walt Disney felt that the animation of Bongo and The Legend of Happy Valley, which had been renamed to Mickey and the Beanstalk, was not sophisticated enough to be a Disney animated feature film. So, the artist decided to include the stories in a package film. Throughout the 1940s, Disney had suggested to pair Mickey and the Beanstalk with Wind in the Willows into a package film titled Two Fabulous Characters. Ultimately, Mickey and the Beanstalk was cut from Two Fabulous Characters and paired with Bongo instead. By late 1947, Two Fabulous Characters was paired with The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and retitled into The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Now, in my honest opinion, the animation in this movie, like many Disney films during the old days, is classical. Plus, it has a good mix with live action in some parts. Anyway, I think the animation in Bongo is not only retro, but it's also very breathtaking as soon as Bongo escapes from the circus train into the forest. As for Mickey and the Beanstalk, well, in my opinion, the design of Happy Valley looks very beautiful. With green rolling hills, a babbling brook, high trees, country roads, fresh fields, prosperous farms, and a beautiful, majestic castle on a hill overlooking the valley. But after the harp disappears, the valley becomes a barren wasteland called Gruesome Gulch, where there's barely any food or water around. Also, Willie's castle, high above the clouds, is really gigantic, both on the outside and inside. Also, I think it must have been really tough for Mickey, Donald, and Goofy to climb those huge stairs to reach the castle's front door. And now, let's talk a little bit about each of the two stories. In my honest opinion, Bongo's story is cute, silly, and romantic. By the way, before I ever saw Fun and Fancy Free, I was introduced to Bongo by reading a huge children's book containing several illustrated Disney stories during my elementary age. Plus, I've recently learned that Bongo was suggested to be a sequel to Dumbo. But sadly, the idea never fully materialized. In earlier drafts, Bongo had a chimpanzee as a friend and partner in his circus act. She was first called Beverly and then Chimpy, but the character was ultimately dropped alongside two mischievous bear cubs when condensing the story. Anyway, aside from the silliness and romantic parts, there is a scene where Bongo is trying to sleep during his first night in the woods, but it quickly gets interrupted by loud noises and a thunderstorm. As for Mickey and the Beanstalk, well, this story happens to be my favorite out of the two. Why? Well, it's because not only was this the first Jack and the Beanstalk adaptation that I ever saw, but I was first introduced to Mickey and the Beanstalk by watching its 1963 version, which was hosted by Professor Ludwig von Drake and his Boodle Beetle companion, Herman. Also to note, this short may bring back memories of a Jack and the Beanstalk anime musical film from the 70s that I blogged a few years ago. But on the other hand, it makes me disappointed that Disney's Gigantic is currently canceled as of 2017 due to story problems. Anyway, I think there are some scenes that are worth mentioning in this, like the Beanstalk. Now, in the original fairy tale, the magic beans were thrown out the window, but in this adaptation, they were thrown into a small hole in the floor, and thanks to the full moon's light, the Beanstalk grows from inside Mickey, Donald, and Goofy's house while they're sleeping. To me, that scene was a little spooky in the beginning, but it becomes very epic as the Beanstalk grows higher and higher into the sky. Also, I think that Stalk was pretty polite and considerate to keep the trio comfortable and not to let them fall. Plus, I think the Dragonfly Attack was pretty intense, including the scene where Mickey tries to escape from Willie. Also to note, ever since I was little, I learned that there was a scene in which Mickey took the cow to the market where he meets Honest John Worthington Foulfellow and Gideon from Pinocchio, who con Mickey into trading his cow for the magic beans. Another version had a scene where Mickey gave the cow to Queen Minnie as a gift, and in return, she gave him the magic beans. However, sadly, both scenes were cut when the story was trimmed. Now let's talk about the movie's song numbers. The opening songs, Fun and Fancy Free, sung by the Disney Choir, and Happy Go Lucky Fellow, sung by Jiminy Cricket, in my opinion, are both very classical, and I find them to be very optimistic, like most Disney songs during the time. Plus, I think people should listen to these two nowadays in order to get their minds off that terrible virus that's named after Rapunzel's kingdom. Next we come to Lazy Countryside, which is the first song in the Bongos segment, performed by the lovely Dinah Shore. To me, this song is very peaceful, laid back, and carefree. And I think it's the kind of song that Ludwig van Beethoven would love, since he loved the country. Plus, I like that Bongo makes friends with several animals who show him around the forest. Next is the romance song, Too Good to Be True, which describes the love between Bongo and Lulabelle. Now, in my eyes, this has got to be the sweetest romance song that I've ever heard in a 1940s Disney film. Plus, The visuals of Bongo and Lulubelle in the clouds describes how anyone would feel when they're in love. I mean, Bambi did the exact same thing when he felt love for Feline. Also, by listening to the lyrics, it feels like the kind of song that anyone, male or female, would sing to their sweethearts. Also, I like when Bongo lets Lulubelle ride on his unicycle. Next we have Say It With a Slap, performed by Dinah Shore and the Kingsmen. This song explains that when two bears fall in love, they slap each other as a sign of affection. Now, this would have to be my absolute favorite song in the entire segment, due to the country rhythm and choreography. Also, I kind of get the feeling that the other bears in this cartoon kind of look similar to Baloo from the Jungle Book or Little John from Robin Hood. Plus, I wonder if this song gave the Disney Imagineers inspiration for the Country Bear Jamboree. Man, I really miss that show. And I just pray that it gets moved to California Adventure in the future. Next we come to the first song in Mickey and the Beanstalk, What a Happy Day, which is sung by the Golden Harp, who oversees Happy Valley and sings it every morning. In my eyes, ever since I was little, this song always brought a smile to my face. And I love the part where we see a herd of cows play and frolic, a few lambs jump up and down, and when a flock of crows and a scarecrow join in by singing their own verse. Next we come to Eat Until I Die, sung by Goofy and Donald, not long before Mickey returns with a box of magic beans. Now, this song is pretty much the shortest song in the entire film, though I like that Goofy and Donald try to imagine a table piled with food. Also to note, this song is based on an Italian song called Funiculi Funicula, which was composed in 1880 by Luigi Denza. Next up is my absolute favorite song in the entire segment, Fee Fi Fo Fum, sung by Willie the Giant as he makes his grand entrance. In my eyes, this song is really whimsical, cartoony, and zany, and I like how Willie shows he can do anything by saying his famous quote, like shrinking, flying, and disappearing. Plus, the song's ending always cracks me up when he says, and I quote, "I don't know no Fifi." And the last song to talk about is My Favorite Dream, which is sung by the Golden Harp in order to put Willie to sleep while Mickey tries to retrieve the key from his vest pocket to save Goofy and Donald from a chest. In my eyes, this song is really beautiful. Plus, I like that the harp sings this while also rooting for Mickey. And now, it's time to talk about the cast. Let's start with Jiminy Cricket, once again voiced by Cliff Edwards, who, after Pinocchio, voiced Jim Crow in Dumbo. Now, for those who are curious as to why Jiminy is here, well, it's because after Pinocchio, Jiminy became so famous that he became a company mascot, and he's been appearing in many other Disney properties, like Disney Sing-Along, House of Mouse, Kingdom Hearts, Walt Disney Anthology, Mickey's Christmas Carol, the Mickey Mouse Club, and others. Though, I hope that he'll be in Robert Zemeckis' upcoming live-action remake of Pinocchio. Anyway, I really like Jiminy's role in this movie, even though it's not as big as his role as Pinocchio's conscience, but still, I like the part where he tries to cheer up a sad doll and a teddy bear by playing a record of Bongo on a record player, which, nowadays, makes me think of a guy in a chair playing a record of Drowsy Chaperone. Also, I like that Jiminy attends Luana Patton's birthday party later on in the movie. Next up, we have Bongo's singer and narrator, Dinah Shore. To me, Dinah has got to be one of the most classic actresses back then. Also, just several years ago, I heard that Dinah got to voice Alice in a radio play version of Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, which was stupidly ripped off and made into a horrendous 2D computer-generated animated film. And I feel bad that my friend, the cartoon hero, had to go through that atrocity, thanks to a certain computer-generated villain named Count CGI, who, may I remind you, influences directors and animators to make terrible CGI films. Anyway, I think Dinah Shore's narration and singing is both very angelic and beautiful. Now here's where we talk about Bongo. Now, in the beginning of the short, he was a circus star who was loved by the audience, but he was sadly treated badly by the circus owners. So his reason for running away into the wild is because he was fed up with being mistreated. Still, I like Bongo, due to the fact that he's friendly, confident, funny, and carefree. And he's also very talented while riding on his unicycle. Plus, Bongo may be a rookie when he's trying to act like a real bear. What I mean is that he struggles when it comes to climbing trees, catching fish, and he misinterprets the way a bear shows their affections. But at least Bongo gets better as the short progresses, even if he gets a little bit of help from a few woodland creatures. Next we come to Bongo's love interest, Lulubelle. In my eyes, she's a really kind, beautiful, and friendly bear, and I like her laugh when she first meets Bongo. Plus, I think Bongo couldn't have asked for a better girlfriend. Next we have Bongo's antagonist, Lumpjaw, whose vocals are provided by sound artist Jimmy McDonald. To me, this guy is a really ferocious bear. Plus, he's a jerk for wanting Lulubelle for himself. Because by looking at the two bears, I think Lulubelle is far too young for Lumpjaw. Also, I think his final confrontation with Bongo is both funny and rough at the same time. Next we come to the late ventriloquist Edgar Burrian and his two dummies, Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer Snerd. Now, the last time I talked about Edgar was during my blog of the Muppet movie last year, where Edgar, along with Charlie, cameoed as judges of the Bogan County beauty pageant. However, in this film, Edgar narrates Mickey and the Beanstalk while he, Charlie, and Mortimer attend Luana Patton's birthday party. In my eyes, Edgar is a very talented ventriloquist, And I like the parts where Edgar moves his head and his mouth a bit while making Charlie and Mortimer talk. Also, I like the part where Edgar grabs a lamp to show a shadow puppet of what Willie the Giant looked like. Also in my eyes, Charlie is very sarcastic and obnoxious at times, and Mortimer is kind of amiable with a slow drawl, and he has a streak of innocence in him. Next we come to Luana Patton. Now the last time I talked about her was during my blog of Song of the South. She was also in other Disney films like Melody Time and So Dear to My Heart. Anyway, I think Luana's role in this movie is very interesting, with her birthday party being attended by Edgar Bergen, Charlie McCarthy, Mortimer Snerd, and Jiminy Cricket. Plus, I like the parts where Luana stands up to Charlie's sarcastic behavior. Next we have the famous Mickey Mouse, voiced by Walt Disney himself. Now, as I said in my blog of the Three Musketeers, Mickey is the one Disney character whom I look up to the most. And I deeply, very deeply, want to be a part of his gang in my future. Anyway, to me, as usual, Mickey is a brave, clever, and loyal mouse. And I like the scene where Mickey tries to trick Willie by convincing him to turn into a fly, and when he uses thread and a sewing needle as a rope in order to get the key from Willie and save his friends. Also, I think Mickey's outfit is pretty reminiscent to his outfit from The Brave Little Tailor. It should also be noted that this was the last time Walt Disney voiced Mickey Mouse before James McDonald took over the role. Next up, we have Donald Duck, voiced by Clarence Ducky Nash. Now, we all know that Donald is famous for having a short temper, but in this movie, his bad temper is very, very dangerous when mixed with hunger. Like when Donald throws a huge fit, and when he attempts to use an axe to kill the cow, who, like in the original fairy tale, is an utter failure. But later, after Mickey returns with magic beans, Donald gets so mad that he throws the beans into a hole in the floor. But despite those anger issues, as well as the scene where he antagonizes a giant dragonfly, Donald is still a fun character. Next we have Goofy, voiced by Pinto Colvig. As usual, Goofy is a very silly member of Mickey's gang, and there are a few funny moments that Goofy does, like using his hat to put water into a leaf boat instead of bailing it. He loses his pants a couple times, and he tries to get his hat from a blob of Jell-O before falling into a bowl of nuts. Our next character is the Golden Harp, voiced by Anita Gordon. This character uses her magical voice to provide Happy Valley with peace and prosperity until she was stolen by Willie the Giant. But after Mickey and the gang rescue her, the valley is restored to its normal state. Plus, not only can the harp use her voice to bring happiness, but she can also sing folks to sleep. And finally, we have Willie the Giant, voiced by Billy Gilbert, who previously voiced Sneezy in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't think Willie is 100% evil. Yes, kidnapping the harp, locking Donald and Goofy in a chest, and chasing Mickey was evil enough. But still, I think Willie is a fun and friendly character. The reason why Willie kidnapped the harp is because he only wanted someone to sing him to sleep. Also, I think it's cool that Willie can turn himself into almost anything, man or beast. Plus, his appearance at the end of the movie was very surprising, especially when he walks off into my birth city, Los Angeles. However, after this movie, Willie would make several appearances in Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, The House of Mouse, and Mickey's Christmas Carol. And now let's move on to my final words. Overall, Fun and Fancy Free is a really fun movie, and I'm happy that my grandmother introduced me to this movie when I was still very little. Both stories in this film have classical animation, wonderful, charming, funny, and memorable characters, as well as cute, fun, and beloved Disney tunes that'll always have a special place in my heart. Plus, Edgar Bergen and Dinah Shore were wonderful narrators. Also, this is another Disney film that I recommend for everybody, especially if they love the classical hand-drawn animation that Walt Disney made possible. So, with that said, I give this film a full 100%. Well, that's all for now, folks. Be sure to join me for my next blog, where I talk about the very first animated film of 2020, which just happens to be Pixar's newest fantasy movie, Mustang Power.